Brand new YouTube channel, Sanford Heart. Thanks for joining me today. My name's Ed West, and I'm going to try to bring to you the stories of Sanford, past, present, and future. I'm going to do this through telling stories through the eyes and hearts of people who make up Sanford Strong. Welcome again to our channel. If you have comments or suggestions, please feel free to email sanfordheart21@gmail.com. Our first guest today is going to be Dolores Porte, Sanford Village President. She recently sat down with me for an interview, and what follows is my conversation with her. And once again, thanks for tuning in. We're fortunate to be here today with Dolores Porte. Did I pronounce that correctly? Mm-hmm. And I appreciate so much her taking some time out of her schedule, which I know is very busy. Teresa Quintana, who's co-founder of Sanford Strong, told me this about Dolores. She said Dolores is a boots-on-the-ground community leader who has grit, ambition, and compassion for the people of Sanford. And I think any of you who know Dolores certainly know that that's the case. And we're just so happy to be with her today. So with that, I'll get into some questions here. Dolores, can you just tell us what it was like for you in the moments and days after the dam breaches and the flood? What it was like for you personally, as well as in your role as mayor?
So personally, my basement was flooded, so a lot of different volunteers came over, just showed up on bicycles and walking and started taking things out of my basement. But at the same time, we were struggling with power lines that were down, sinkholes, and unsafe conditions downtown. So we were trying to work very closely with our local contractors and skilled trades to come into town and help us move debris out of the way and make things safer down there. It's all a blur, like maybe many people feel, because there was so much going on so fast that we were trying to take care of for individuals.
Yeah, a lot of people have said there's not much time to really think. You're just kind of going through the motions.
After we returned on May 20th to see what happened from the dam break, there were even some communications that the dam in Sanford was still not safe. And so there was a little bit of angst about having everyone back in town before we understood the true safety of the situation. But I don't think there was any stopping people from coming to see what happened to their homes and to start working on remediating whatever they could.
Can you give us a sense of how the whole thing has changed you, or has it changed you?
The flood has changed me a lot. First of all, I didn't know everybody that lived in the village. I knew of people, but I didn't know them personally. And I've built a lot of personal relationships with people. I think I know almost every homeowner and business owner now, at least in the downtown area, pretty upfront and personal. But also, I experienced a lot of giving toward Sanford that was very nice to have, especially given the pandemic and all the people that just showed up and started helping. So the flood has changed me a lot in my connection with the community and my appreciation for all that local people and people from far out of the area helped us during the initial cleanup and even until today.
Can you tell us what's a typical day like for you?
A typical day now is talking to FEMA on what all the different public assistance grants we applied for. We applied for grants to fix the streets, to fix our storm sewers that were plugged by silt, to get money to rebuild the park, and money to buy people out of flood zone A if they want to be bought out of flood zone A. So there's a lot of paperwork that FEMA requires in order to apply for this grant money that is available to us because of the declaration of a disaster, but it's a lot of moving parts to describe the damages and what may or may not be paid for. So we have to get quotes and estimates. And it's a lot like dealing with an insurance company because they want to know exactly how the village was before the flood, because they mainly return you to pre-flood conditions. So no upgrades, and if it wasn't working before the flood, they're not going to fix it after the flood. So a lot of paperwork in that regard. I'm also talking to a lot of residential homeowners to see what their future holds, because we lost at least 32 properties in the village and residents, and so for properties that are left to build on, we're trying to understand if people want to sell them, if they're going to rebuild on them. So a lot of work with residents from that regard, but also, as you've noticed on some of our meetings, hooking up people with resources that can help them rebuild. So if they want to rebuild but they don't have the money or they need help with construction, is talking with people and getting them connected to those resources.
Is it FEMA then that you mainly interact with in terms of agencies?
I interact with FEMA, but interestingly enough, the Michigan State Police are the municipality or the group that administers the FEMA grant money. So once the FEMA grant money is approved for the village, then we fill out another set of applications with the state of Michigan to actually execute a plan against that money that's been given to us by the federal government.
That's interesting. It's the state police.
Yeah, because they're part of Homeland Security, and Homeland Security is who takes care of disaster-related issues. So there are a lot of people to talk to. For example, I talked to the Department of Treasury in Lansing because we were awarded $1 million from the state of Michigan towards the rebuild, and the Department of Treasury wants to understand when we're going to spend it and what we will spend it on. I talked to MDOT and the Midland County Road Commission because we have a temporary fix for our bridge, but we need a permanent fix for our bridge. And most of this money from the feds or the Federal Highway Administration have a match component up to 25%. So even if we're awarded, let's say $1 million towards fixing the road, 25% of that will be at the expense of the village, or donor money or in-kind services from local contractors. So the interactions are pretty varied. I interact with Congressman Molinar and Representative Annette Glenn, and Dylan Hellis is Governor Whitmer's person that looks at Midland Bay City Saginaw area. So a lot of politicians reach out to understand what we're still dealing with, what they can help us with. So it's a wide variety of people. Donors are still calling, what can they help with for the park rebuild? Can they help buy trees if we're going to put trees in the park? So it's a very unique set of people that I deal with, and that's another big development thing for me, is all the different agencies that I work with and the different government officials that I might not have interacted with in the past.
And that's probably pretty new. I mean, that
Yes.
came about because of the flood.
Yes, for sure.
There's a lot of moving parts.
There are, because we also have regular business before the board, such as things we were talking about when you got here, as enforcement related issues related to blight,
You still have to be
related to parking on the streets and things that we need to keep the village going. The other thing that we're looking at is how to bring businesses here. And so I've reached out to a number of restaurant owners, coffee shop owners, dance instructors, people who want yoga, etc., to initiate conversations about bringing new business to Sanford. And one of the things we're also looking at is the place where we had the Christmas trees during the holidays, to put that as green space and put food trucks and have concerts down there, maybe an ice skating rink. So there are a lot of different people that we're reaching out to help rebuild Sanford.
When you say we, I think a lot of that falls on you, though, I believe.
Yeah, I would say I'm the orchestrator, but it takes groups of people to help. I do a lot of the initiating the project and holding the meetings related to the project, but a lot of other people are helping with the footwork and implementation. So that is a great community effort.
What is the biggest challenge you've faced, you think, since the flood?
The biggest challenge is keeping up with the paperwork. I think because FEMA, because of previous disasters and previous fraud, they have a lot of bells and whistles a lot of data that they need to find out, including we put some riprap, which is rock, around the catch basin, and they had to know from the contractor who did the work where they bought the riprap, which quarry, which city, etc. So they really look at everything to the finite degree. Even for the ballparks, they looked at the size of the ball fields and they subtracted the pitcher's mound to figure out how much they would pay for the grass. So they had to know the size of the pitcher's mound on the ball field. So it's very long, tedious process with lots and lots of data required.
I think most people would have no idea there was that level of detail required. I mean, it's pretty surprising that it's that much.
It's surprising and it's daunting. And so pre-COVID, they sent FEMA people to come and help with that data mining. But because of COVID, it's all done via Zoom. And I think the other thing that makes this really difficult for us is our accountant's building was washed away, as well as their backup tapes that were in their safe, and our clerk's home was washed away with a lot of her records, and she had a lot to deal with during this time. And then we had an election where we elected a new clerk and a new village committee member. So there were lots of people that had their own personal things they needed to take care of, and we didn't have the records that we would normally have. So it's really a lot of extra work because of losing records and things like that.
Data that you can't ever get back.
Correct. Or if we have it, it's amongst the village committee. So many of the things the clerk would have had, we might have from the meetings, like a hard copy or our own copy from email.
Okay.
I know one of the questions that many people have, and certainly I have, and it's probably a tough question to answer, is are the lakes going to be back, and how are they going to be back? How is that going to happen?
Well, the lakes coming back depends on the work that Four Lakes Task Force is doing with the county commissioners and with the federal government to get those lakes funded. The estimated time is about 5 years, and the current thought is there would be a special assessment on lakefront owners, and there are many citizens that are very concerned about that special assessment because they've already lost their home, didn't get insurance, had to use savings to rebuild. So I think it's a matter of time when it will come back, and hopefully will be cheaper than what's being estimated so that homeowners aren't hit with an additional tax. So there's still a lot happening in that space around rebuilding the dams.
That's the toughest sticking point, isn't it, that assessment?
The assessment is the sticking point. I think it's fairly expensive in some cases, and people have already been financially harmed. So I think if that special assessment can be reduced or not at all, that there would be more support for the dams coming back. But even without the dams, I would say this area has a lot to do. We have the rail trail, we have Veterans Memorial Park, we have Pine Haven, so you can cross-country ski here, you can mountain bike here. There's still fishing south of the dam. So in the next few years, I think there are still lots of things to do in this area, and that's another reason we're looking at getting the food trucks and the music and things lined up for the summer, getting the ball fields back so that it's still a community with lots to do until the lake. Yeah.
But 5 years is, it's a stretch.
It's a stretch, and seems like that's the best scenario. I think there are a lot of really talented people working on getting it done. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is involved, the county commissioners, the state, the federal government. I think there's a lot of desire to have them back. There's an economic impact of not having them. A study was done by Michigan State a few years back, and can't recall the numbers, but I believe it brings millions of dollars of revenue to the county. So there are lots of different reasons to want the lakes to come back, but I understand the local people who would be assessed this tax have a concern.
In looking back at your interactions with people that were affected by the flood, is there a moment or a person or a family that stands out as in your mind?
Well, people lost so much it's hard to pick one particular family, but mainly because Chris Billings lives at the corner of Oak and Cass Street, which is not far from me, and he has a family of 3. I've walked his journey with him pretty much from day one, and now Habitat is building him a house, and it's a really good outcome. But there were so many people who lost so many things of value to them. It's hard to say who the next person would be, because it's a day-to-day finding of somebody who's still struggling. As you know from our support group recently, a lady joined us who was still having a lot of problems with her house, and we got her lined up with people who can help. So it's kind of this ongoing tugging at the heartstrings, because there's just one new situation after the other.
Besides the physical resources, I know that's a big issue, is drywall and flooring. Are there other needs that you feel people have here that maybe aren't being met?
I think people still have needs for financial support, and there are different resources out there with financial support. It's just a matter of getting people connected to those resources, and that's a very tough thing to do, because people are in different places in their journey. They live in a different physical location, and I believe the resources are there if we all keep connecting with each other and digging for them. So I think there's still financial resources, especially for the residents. And then we need, businesses to come to Sanford. We lost 2 restaurants. We'll be having 1, but we need businesses to come. And I think overall we have a lot of good help here, as is demonstrated by what you can see on the Sanford Strong website. I think some administrative support would be great. We, the board, look for all kinds of volunteers to help us with these grants and data, and we call on the community quite a bit to help us dig for quotes and information for FEMA. So I think there's not a particular thing that I can think of.
For the average citizen trying to get connected, how do they approach that, or how can they get connected with resources in the most efficient way?
I think the most efficient way is really still Sanford Strong Facebook page, because there are thousands of people that watch that page, and there are so many people from different walks of life. Somebody needs information about their furnace, somebody needs information about their hot water heater or drywall, or where's the best place to call for a washer or dryer. And so I really think that's a great source of information. You still have to do your homework when somebody recommends something to you, but if there are things that I can help people with, that audience in Sanford Strong will connect with me directly. They'll say, Dolores knows about that, and they'll tag me, or long-term recovery, and they'll tag Katie. So it's a great place to share information. Unfortunately, not everyone uses Facebook, and so we also use the Midland Daily News as a source. And not everyone follows Sanford Strong. Some people follow the Village web page, but the Village web page is more specifically to update people on the rebuilding of the Village of Sanford.
So, and do the case managers and other people watch Sanford Strong, do you think? Do they look at that Facebook page?
I don't know if the long-term recovery group case managers specifically watch that page, but those of us who do watch the page point things out to them, like Teresa Quintana and myself and others. If we see something on Facebook we think they can help with, we will flag them to that person.
I know this is a tough question here, and there's a lot of people that have helped, but are there some people that you stand out as heroes to you that you'd want to thank here now? Or?
Well, I'd say it's the people with the longevity. There are a lot of people who've helped along the way that have been extremely important, but people who are still giving at a pretty high level of hours and time are people like Jerry Cole, our Jerome Township Fire Chief, and Teresa Quintana from Sanford Strong. Anna Marilette started out from the beginning with help from Briggs, but she herself personally is now helping keep the momentum going. Andy and Megan Clark have helped a lot with debris cleanup personally. Then they were able to get resources from Dow Chemical to help, and now they're helping with the Sanford Youth League rebuild of the Village Park. So there are some people who've been in it since day one and that continue to be involved. Rick Hatfield is another person that comes to mind. But there really are just a long, long list of people that have helped and helped since day one. So if I missed anyone, I apologize.
I know it's a hard question. It's a hard question.
But there are people who just started right from the beginning and who are still committing quite a few hours a day.
Tireless.
Yeah, tireless, yeah.
Dolores, can you tell us how you got to this position and a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so, and I grew up in Coleman, so I'm used to living in a small community and I really enjoy it. I got my accounting degree at Michigan State, and eventually in my 50s I got a master's degree from the University of Michigan Flint in the study of social cultures and social sciences, as well as a lot of different experiences at Dow Chemical, and in the end I was the global accounts payable leader for Dow Chemical. So I'm using a lot of skills from living in a small town, from my education, and from my work at Dow to help figure out how to navigate all these unusual situations that I've never been in before. So I'm lucky to have those kinds of experiences to help me help the village rebuild.
And the village is lucky to have you.
Thank you.
All right. You can stop. What can we look forward to in this area in Sanford for the summer?
So this summer there should be a number of new homes being built, businesses continuing to be built. We're going to have the fireworks at the county park here by the Sanford Lake Dam this year. So we're planning on having the fireworks. We're going to have food trucks and music. And we're partnering with Midland Brewing Company to do some fundraising that's fairly typical. They have something in Bay City, not Midland Brewing Company, but Bay City has something called the Dry Dock, and it's where some of the materials are donated and a nonprofit runs the evening and then they get the money from that. They do that, I think, at the Loon Stadium too, where a nonprofit can run the concession stand and make money from doing that. So we have a lot of things in the pipeline for the village socially yet this year, as well as a lot of rebuilding. The park will be rebuilt, homes will be rebuilt, businesses are continuing to rebuild. So it's going to be a very exciting year, actually.
All right, finally I wanted to ask you, this may be a difficult question also, what's in the future for Dolores?
I don't know.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Well, every few months I think this will all kind of wind down in 6 months, and then 6 months comes and I think this will wind down in a few months. So I think for the next couple of years we'll be working at developing Sanford, because there are a number of different tracks of housing we're looking at. A lot of people would like to see senior living come to Sanford, which is a much bigger, longer term project. People would like to see a laundromat come. We need to find the right location and the right investor. And we have we do not have city sewer. We have septic tanks and septic fields, so that sometimes is limiting to us, so we may look for rural development money. So I think there are some longer term things to work on, but for me, I'm just hoping to relax, I guess, Ed.
But it sounds like you're in it for the foreseeable future.
I think I am. It wasn't what I anticipated at the beginning. I thought, oh, within a year a lot of these things will be done, but I think it will take a couple of years.
Well, Dolores, I want to thank you again for being here today, for being our first guest on this channel. If you folks like the channel, please, make that known, and you can subscribe to the channel. If you have comments, questions, or ideas for future guests or events, you can send them to sanfordheart21@gmail.com. The email is sanfordheart21@gmail.com. Once again, I want to thank Dolores not only for being here today, but for all the terrific work she's done. She's an incredible asset to our community.